I failed in love 3 times, 3 rings, 3 promises, 3 endings, and I'm still standing, not bitter, not broken, but rebuilt. People often assume that success in one area of life guarantees success in another. But love doesn't work like a business. You can't scale it. You can't automate it. You can't innovate your way out of emotional pain. So why should you listen to someone who's failed 3 times? Because failure is a brutal teacher, and when you survive it enough times, you start seeing what's real. Not what love looks like in movies or Instagram posts or wedding speeches, but what actually holds people together and what quietly tears them apart. If you've ever wondered why love feels amazing at the start, but painful later, or why you keep repeating the same relationship patterns, or if you're scared to trust again, then this talk is not just worth watching, it might actually be the most important 10 minutes you give yourself today. Let's begin. Let's dismantle one of the most dangerous myths we're told growing up, that love is something you find like a treasure, and once you find the one, it's permanent, automatic, self-sustaining. That belief almost destroyed me. Each of my marriages began with deep passion, the kind that makes your heart race. That illusion of permanence, the fairy tale belief that this is it, we've found it, game over, kept me blind. I assumed that as long as I stayed loyal, provided, and committed to the bigger mission in life, love would take care of itself in the background. It doesn't. Love is not a trophy. It's not an endpoint. It's a dynamic system, a constantly evolving relationship between 2 minds and 2 sets of emotional codes. And like any system, it decays without energy input. What I didn't understand in my earlier relationships was this: love requires maintenance. Regular, intentional, sometimes difficult maintenance. It's like running a high-performance machine. You can't just turn the ignition and expect it to fly forever. You need to monitor its pressure points. You need to notice when something starts vibrating off tune. You need to ask, what's not working anymore, before the system crashes. Each of my divorces followed a familiar pattern. Initial euphoria, gradual emotional drift, unspoken assumptions, passive disappointment, then sudden collapse, not because of betrayal, not because we didn't care, but because I believed love, once initiated, was self-sustaining. It isn't. I was solving billion-dollar problems, but missing the subtle signals in my personal life. I could design breakthrough technology, but I wasn't building breakthrough communication. I thought love was a feeling. Turns out it's more like a system architecture. Here's the truth I wish someone had told me earlier. Love is a project, not a product. You don't just get it. You build it. Every day, with intention, with humility, with updates, not sexy, but real. And when you stop maintaining it, stop updating it, don't be surprised when it lags, breaks down, or just stops working. If you're in a relationship right now, I want you to ask yourself, when was the last time we redesigned the way we talk to each other? Do we give each other emotional feedback like we give each other business feedback? Have we ever updated the expectations we had when we first started dating? Or are we still trying to install new life into an outdated operating system? The hard truth is this: relationships, like technology, have versions. What worked in version 1.0 will crash in version 4.0 unless you adapt. Each of my divorces felt like a crash, but what really happened is that I ignored the error messages. I ignored the updates. I assumed love would carry us instead of carrying it together. What I've learned is this: sustainable love requires deliberate maintenance, emotional calibration, and constant evolution. Without that, no amount of romance, chemistry, or shared dreams can survive the entropy. This was the first brutal lesson and probably the most important one I learned about love. After my second divorce, I did something I hadn't done before. I tried to reverse engineer what went wrong. I approached love like I would approach a failing startup or a misfiring rocket engine. I asked questions. I made timelines. I mapped emotional events. I analyzed behavior patterns. But no matter how much logic I applied, one truth became painfully clear. You can't optimize a relationship without emotional awareness. This was humbling. You can build brilliant systems, create hyper-efficient workflows, and lead thousands of people. But if you can't feel what your partner is feeling, you are disconnected from the very energy that keeps love alive. Early on in each marriage, I confused emotional presence with performance. I believed if I showed up, worked hard, provided stability, and handled life's challenges, that was enough. I thought love was about solving the big problems. It isn't. Love is in the small, often invisible moments. The way you respond when your partner is anxious. The way you listen when they're not saying anything at all. The way you adapt when their emotional needs shift with time. The problem was, I wasn't trained for that. We live in a world that trains us to be efficient, productive, and rational. But love isn't rational. It's emotional. It lives in subtle cues, in unspoken needs, in vulnerability, and that's the part I missed. Let me explain it through a simple analogy. Imagine trying to fix a machine you don't fully understand. You see blinking lights, strange noises, overheating signals, but instead of learning how it works emotionally, you just keep applying technical solutions. That's what I did in my relationships. I misread emotional distress as overreaction. I mistook silence for peace. I thought if we weren't fighting, we were fine. We weren't. Eventually, I realized something critical. Emotional intelligence isn't optional in love. It's the operating system. If you don't understand your own emotions, your fears, your triggers, your defaults, you will react instead of respond. You'll defend instead of connect, and you'll damage what you were trying to protect. This was hard for me because vulnerability used to feel like weakness. When you're used to high pressure environments, your instinct is to control, to fix, to dominate the variables. But love doesn't want to be controlled. It wants to be understood. I had to unlearn the idea that success in life meant success in love. They don't follow the same rulebook. In business, you scale. In love, you deepen. In leadership, you command. In love, you surrender. In logic, you calculate. In love, you listen. That was the second truth I learned. Emotional awareness is not just helpful in relationships. It's fundamental. After my third divorce, I finally sat with that truth and accepted that I couldn't logic my way into someone's heart. I had to feel my way into it, with presence, with empathy, with softness. The same person who could stay up all night troubleshooting hardware failures couldn't sit through a 10-minute conversation about hurt feelings without shutting down emotionally. That was my wake-up call. So here's what I'll say to you now. If you want to succeed in love, you need to develop a new skill set, one that no degree, no success, no intellect can replace: emotional awareness. Start by asking, what am I really feeling right now? What might my partner be feeling beneath the words? Where am I reacting out of fear, not truth? These aren't soft questions. They're survival questions for anyone who wants love to last. One of the hardest lessons I learned after 3 divorces is this: you don't attract what you want. You attract what you haven't healed. That realization hit me like a system failure. I had been searching for love on the outside without addressing what was broken on the inside. And every relationship I entered, no matter how different the person seemed, ended up following a pattern I was unintentionally repeating. Think about it this way. If your internal system is corrupted, every download, every connection gets infected. Not because people are bad, but because you're unconsciously writing the same code into every new start. Each of my marriages began with what felt like opposites. One was quiet and nurturing. One was bold and intellectual. One was creative and emotionally intense. But they all ended up with me feeling disconnected, emotionally exhausted, and wondering if I was built for love at all. At first, I blamed incompatibility. Then I blamed timing. Eventually, I blamed myself, but blame isn't useful. Responsibility is. So I started asking deeper questions. Why do I always feel the need to prove my worth in relationships? Why do I prioritize my partner's emotions over my own until I burn out? Why do I choose partners who seem emotionally unavailable? And the answer kept pointing to the same place, my past. We all carry emotional DNA. For some, it comes from childhood wounds. For others, it's heartbreak. Trauma, abandonment, neglect. No matter how far you run from it, you end up dragging it into your next relationship like a virus in the background of your system. In my case, I realized I had an unresolved fear of being emotionally dependent. Somewhere along the way, I learned that emotional self-sufficiency was safer than vulnerability. So I attracted people who were also emotionally guarded, because that felt familiar, predictable, safe. But here's the problem with that. Familiar doesn't always mean healthy. Sometimes the people you feel chemistry with are simply mirroring your deepest wounds. It feels intense, but it's not love, it's emotional repetition. It took therapy, journaling, solitude, and some brutally honest conversations with myself to realize that the love I wanted required a version of me I hadn't become yet. So I stopped dating, not because I gave up, but because I needed to pause the cycle. I needed to clear the code. Here's what I learned during that silence. You don't need another partner to heal. You need yourself. Healing isn't a destination. It's a decision you make every day to face your patterns. Once you heal, your standards change, your energy changes, and suddenly, what once attracted you no longer does. You don't chase intensity anymore. You choose safety, consistency, emotional availability. Peace, the version of me that entered marriage, one thought love, was fireworks. The version of me after divorce, 3 learned that love is a stable frequency, not boring, safe, not dramatic, secure, and I finally saw that real love doesn't come from what you lack. It comes from what you've integrated. That's when everything began to shift. So if your love life feels like a loop, if you keep ending up with people who hurt you, neglect you, or trigger you, don't ask, why do they do this to me? Ask, what in me keeps choosing this? Because until you heal the parts of yourself that think pain is love, you'll keep calling it destiny. It's not. It's programming, and programming can be rewritten. If there's one invisible force that destroys more relationships than cheating, distance, or incompatibility, it's ego. And I don't mean arrogance. I mean that subtle, unconscious need to be right, to protect yourself, to win. Ego is the invisible firewall we build around ourselves when we don't want to get hurt again. It tells us, you don't need to apologize first. It whispers, don't show them how much you care. They'll use it against you. It convinces us, you're doing more than they are. You deserve better. And the worst part, ego feels smart. It feels like strength, but it's not. It's fear wearing confidence as a mask. Let me give you a real example from my second marriage. We had a disagreement over something small, how to handle a family holiday. Instead of resolving it, I withdrew. I didn't want to lose. I convinced myself she was overreacting. I told myself she'll come around. She didn't, and what could have been solved with a 10-minute vulnerable conversation became 3 weeks of emotional distance. Why? Because I was more interested in being right than being connected. That pattern repeated across all 3 marriages. Ego became my default. When I felt unseen, I shut down. When I felt criticized, I became defensive. When I felt hurt, I masked it with cold logic. But here's what I now understand. You can't have true intimacy where ego is leading the conversation, because ego says, don't admit you're wrong, don't show weakness, don't let them get too close. And love says, be honest even if it's uncomfortable, be soft even if you're scared, be open even if it means risking rejection. It took losing 3 marriages for me to see that vulnerability isn't a liability. It's the most powerful connector in love. It took me even longer to realize that you can either protect your pride or protect your partnership, but rarely both. One of the biggest lies ego tells us is this: if I open up, I'll lose control. But in reality, control is an illusion. You're never controlling another person's behavior. What you can control is how honestly you show up, how fully you love, how openly you listen. After divorce #3, I began to track my ego in real time. I noticed the moments I wanted to interrupt, the times I wanted to justify instead of understand, the moments I felt triggered and reached for distance instead of closeness. And slowly, I trained myself to pause, to ask, is this response about connection or protection? Am I trying to build a bridge or defend a castle? Do I want to be right or do I want to be close? Those questions changed everything, because here's the deeper truth. You can't love someone and guard yourself at the same time. Love isn't efficient. It's messy, human, vulnerable, and deeply risky. But it's in that risk that real connection lives. So if you're in a relationship now, or hope to be, watch your ego. Not because it makes you a bad person, but because it makes you less available. Love doesn't require perfection. It requires presence. It requires softness in moments where pride wants to harden. It requires choosing to understand when it would be easier to walk away. That's what I wish I had done more often. And now, if there's one thing I practice above all else in relationships, it's ego awareness, because when ego steps aside, love finally has room to breathe. After my 3rd divorce, I was alone, truly alone. Not the kind of alone where you're just single or bored on a Saturday night, but the kind of silence that forces you to ask, who am I without someone else? That's when I discovered one of the most painful and liberating truths. Loneliness isn't solved by being with someone. It's solved by being in alignment with your purpose. This is the mistake so many of us make, myself included. We try to escape our inner void by filling it with another person. We confuse company with connection. We believe love will rescue us from the parts of ourselves we haven't made peace with. But that's not love. That's dependency. And I learned, through the wreckage of 3 failed marriages, that no human being can carry the weight of making you feel whole. In each relationship, I poured myself into the partnership. I gave everything, but underneath it, I was hoping that love would complete me, that it would quiet the restlessness inside, that it would give me peace. And when it didn't, I felt betrayed, abandoned, but really, I was asking love to do a job it was never designed to do, because love doesn't give you your identity, it reflects it. And if your identity is unclear, if your purpose is lost, then love can only highlight that emptiness. During my post-divorce solitude, I had to sit with questions I had avoided for years. What am I building that's bigger than myself? What do I contribute to the world that has nothing to do with being in a relationship? Who am I when no one is watching, praising, or validating me? It was hard, brutally honest, but also freeing. because for the first time I wasn't performing. I wasn't trying to win anyone over. I was simply learning to be with myself. And in that space, I began to rediscover my purpose, not just professionally, but personally, not just missions and goals and deadlines, but meaning that was independent of romantic success. Here's the paradox. When you stop needing love to save you, you become capable of real love. Because now, you're not asking for someone to complete you. You're inviting them to walk beside you. Too many relationships crumble because they're built on expectation rather than alignment. Expectation says, you make me feel valuable. Alignment says, I already feel valuable, and I want to share that with you. That's what purpose does. It grounds you. It creates stability from within, so your love is not a desperate grasp for comfort, but a generous offering of presence. Now, when I look back, I see that I was using love to distract myself from the inner work. And distraction works, until it doesn't, until the mask cracks, until you wake up next to someone and realize you still feel alone. Real connection happens when two people who know who they are come together, not to escape loneliness, but to expand life. So if you're feeling alone, don't rush to fill the void. Sit with it, ask it questions, and then ask yourself, what am I here to give, even if no one claps for it? What lights me up, even when I'm the only one in the room? Because when you live in purpose, you become magnetic. You radiate wholeness. And from that space, the love you attract will no longer be about survival, it'll be about synergy. That's the kind of love I'm building now. And that's the kind I wish I had known how to build back then. Let me finish with the most important truth I've learned, the one I wish I could time, travel back and whisper to my younger self before every marriage began. Love isn't something you find. It's something you build. This may sound simple, but most people don't actually believe it. I didn't, not really. We grow up believing in this myth of discovery, that love is out there waiting for us. That one day we'll bump into someone, the stars will align, and the rest will take care of itself. That's not how it works, and believing it does more damage than we realize. I used to think relationships failed because I hadn't met the right person. After each divorce, I blamed compatibility, timing, personality types. I kept searching for someone who would make love easy, but love isn't easy. It's work, daily, intentional, uncomfortable, unsexy. Work, and the people who succeed at it aren't just lucky. They're committed to building it, even when it's hard, even when it's boring, even when it's inconvenient. Think about it like this. You don't find a great career. You build it. You don't find physical health. You work on it. You don't find deep friendships. You invest time, energy, and presence. Love is the same. Every day, you are building or breaking the foundation of your relationship. Through your words, your silence, your priorities, your patterns, even your avoidance is an act of building, just in the wrong direction. After my third divorce, I stopped asking, why didn't it last? And I started asking, what didn't I build? I hadn't built the emotional tools to navigate conflict without shutting down. I hadn't built the communication habits that turn small tensions into deeper understanding. I hadn't built the capacity to sit with my own discomfort, so I didn't project it onto someone else. Here's what I know now. Real love is not built during the good times. It's built during the hard ones. It's built when you stay instead of withdraw, when you lean in instead of shut down, when you admit your flaws instead of defend them. It's built when you treat love not like a prize you win, but like a structure you maintain, brick by brick, day after day. And here's the thing no one tells you. The most extraordinary relationships are not between perfect people. They're between people who are willing to be imperfect together, who choose each other even when it's hard, even when the shine fades, even when their past wants to sabotage the present. So if you're in love right now or hoping to be, stop waiting to find the right one. Start learning how to build with someone. Start practicing patience, emotional literacy, repair. Start seeing love not as a destination, but as a daily decision. Because if you treat love like luck, it'll disappear like luck. But if you treat it like construction, it will stand. Let me say this again, as clearly as I can. Love is built slowly, deliberately, honestly, and when you build it right, it becomes the most stable structure you'll ever stand in. So maybe I survived 3 divorces not because I'm unlucky, but because life was determined to teach me what most people never get the chance to learn until it's too late. Now, I'm not chasing love. I'm learning how to build it with someone who's ready to build too. And that finally feels like peace.